Good morning. We begin in Washington, where President Donald Trump has issued a stark ultimatum to Moscow, threatening to impose a 100% secondary tariff on Russian goods if a peace deal for the Ukraine conflict is not reached within the next 50 days. The president announced the policy during a White House meeting yesterday with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. The move represents a significant escalation in pressure on the Kremlin. Secondary tariffs are a powerful economic weapon. They don't just target the primary country, in this case Russia, but also penalize any foreign companies and countries that continue to do business with it. A 100% tariff would effectively double the cost of Russian goods for any entity wanting to avoid American sanctions, likely crippling Russia's ability to export to cooperating nations. During the announcement, President Trump expressed his frustration with the lack of progress in negotiations. He told reporters, quote, "I'm disappointed in President Putin because I thought we would have had a deal 2 months ago, but it doesn't seem to get there." End quote. The deadline is now set. "If we don't have a deal in 50 days, it's very simple," the president stated. "They'll be at 100%, and that's the way it is." This aggressive timeline puts immense pressure on diplomatic channels to find a resolution to the conflict in Ukraine, which continues to simmer with no clear end in sight. The presence of NATO's Secretary General during the announcement underscores the international dimension of this strategy, framing it within the context of the Western alliance's security concerns. This hardline stance on international policy is mirrored by a growing confrontation on the domestic economic front. As the Trump administration is now reportedly exploring the possibility of firing Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. In an interview with ABC News this past Sunday, Kevin Hassett, the director of the National Economic Council, confirmed that the president's authority to remove the Fed chair is, quote, "a thing that's being looked into." This potential move challenges the long-standing tradition of Federal Reserve independence, a principle designed to insulate monetary policy from short-term political pressures. President Trump has been a vocal critic of Powell for years, primarily for not lowering interest rates as aggressively as the White House would like. The president argues that lower rates would save what he calls trillions of dollars in interest cost on the national debt, while the law states a Fed chair can only be removed for cause. What constitutes sufficient cause remains a legally gray area. When pressed on this, Hassett noted, "Certainly, if there's cause, he does," referring to the president's authority. The administration may be building its case around more than just policy disagreements. Russell Vought, the director of the Office of Management and Budget, recently highlighted concerns over a massive renovation of the central bank's headquarters. The project is reportedly already $700 million over its initial $2.5 billion budget. Hassett was asked directly if this cost overrun could be considered a valid reason to fire Powell, suggesting the administration is seeking concrete grounds to justify such an unprecedented action. While the administration explores the limits of its power over the central bank, it has just received a significant victory from the Supreme Court in its efforts to reshape the federal government. In a 6-3 ruling yesterday, the High Court gave President Trump the green light to move forward with firing nearly 1,400 employees from the Department of Education. The decision in the case, McMahon versus New York, came in the form of an unsigned order, meaning the majority did not provide a written explanation for its reasoning. This ruling reverses a lower federal court order that had issued an injunction, blocking the terminations and directing the government to rehire some employees who had already been laid off. Justices Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson formally dissented from the majority's decision. This legal victory is a major step toward fulfilling one of the president's signature campaign promises to shutter the Department of Education entirely. On March 20th of this year, the president signed Executive Order 12242, which formally pledged to close the agency. The order stated that the department, quote, has entrenched the education bureaucracy and sought to convince America that federal control over education is beneficial. With the Supreme Court's approval, the administration can now accelerate its plan to dramatically reduce the size and scope of the department, a move that is sure to have profound implications for federal education policy and its implementation across the country. But even as the administration moves to dismantle parts of the Department of Education, it faces a new and broad legal challenge from a coalition of states over its control of existing education funds. Yesterday, a group of 24 states, along with the District of Columbia, filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration, alleging that it has illegally frozen more than $6 billion in funding designated for critical educational programs. The lawsuit, filed in federal court in Rhode Island, argues that these funds were properly appropriated by Congress and, by law, should have been released on July 1st. State officials say the delay is preventing them and local school districts from adequately preparing for the upcoming school year. The frozen money is intended for vital services, including after-school care and summer learning programs that serve millions of students. According to the lawsuit, the U.S. Department of Education informed states on June 30th that the funds were being held. The department's rationale, as stated in the legal filing, is that the money is pending a review to ensure it would be spent, quote, in accordance with the president's priorities and the department's statutory responsibilities. The lawsuit sets up a major confrontation between the White House and a bipartisan group of states who argue the administration is overstepping its authority and harming children by withholding congressionally approved funding. These intense political and legal battles are unfolding against a somber national backdrop. This past Sunday, July 13th, marked the one-year anniversary of the assassination attempt on President Donald Trump. The event, which took place during a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, sent shockwaves across the nation and the world. The anniversary has been a moment of reflection on the deep political divisions and heightened security concerns that have defined the past year. That event continues to cast a long shadow over the American political landscape, serving as a stark reminder of the volatility of the current era. In a related development on the international stage, the European Union has announced it is putting its planned trade countermeasures against the United States on hold for the time being. The move could be seen as a gesture of de-escalation, or perhaps a tactical pause, as the EU assesses the administration's new tariff threats against Russia. Meanwhile, despite the political turbulence, the fundamental business of governing continues in Washington. Two significant votes are scheduled on Capitol Hill this week. The House of Representatives is set to address the annual Pentagon funding bill, a cornerstone of national security policy, as well as new legislation aimed at regulating the rapidly evolving world of cryptocurrencies. These proceedings show that even amidst major executive actions and court battles, the legislative branch is pressing on with its own agenda.